So my name is Marco Papa, and I work at Uniper Energy Storage. We are an SSO, a storage system operator, and we're operating in 9 sites storing natural gas for a total capacity of over 80 terawatt hours. Looking at the geographies where we operate, we're mostly active in Germany, where most of our sites are. We're also the largest gas storage operator in Germany. And we have also operation in Austria and in the UK. What jumps to the eye looking at this map is that we are operating 2 different types of storages. In the northwest, we have salt caverns. So these are man-made cavities in suitable salt layers that we can use for storing different fluids, and they're typically very flexible. And in the southeast, we have porous rock storages. So these are typically deleted natural gas production reservoirs. And we can put natural gas back into these reservoirs to store it. So the gas in such reservoirs is stored and flows through pores of the rock and is also withdrawn. So typically these sites are slower and are used rather for seasonal storage. When it comes down to hydrogen, we have been looking into storing hydrogen into these type of sites for many years. So our engineers and our geologists have participated in various research projects for over a decade, but we have had a shift just in the last couple of years where we really started working on 2 pilots. So unsurprisingly, one of the pilots is for salt caverns and the other pilot is for porous rock storage. And starting with the salt caverns, I'll say a few words about our project in Krumern in northwest Germany, where we're going to be testing hydrogen storage in a tiny cavern. I say tiny, it's 3,000 cubic meters, but it's tiny compared to the commercial scale facilities that we operate. That can be over 1 million cubic meter in terms of volume. So even if the cavern is small, we're going to fully test it in real operating conditions with pressures beyond 200 bars and fully cycling it. Where are we with this pilot? We have used, we started in 2022. We used an existing bore well that we checked for suitability for hydrogen. We have done the alignment with the permitting, with the mining authorities, with notified bodies. We have had our staff trained to operate with hydrogen. And then we've done the material tests for the casing. And we also have to do some re-drilling works to make sure that the piping was clean and not obstructed. So after all of that, we could go into the solution mining phase, where we started leaching the cavern, and this is also completed. So we had reached the volume that we had targeted, and we're now doing the hydrogen completion. So we're putting the piping in the ground so we're able to inject hydrogen. And we plan to inject the first hydrogen this year already. After we've started doing the hydrogen filling, we'll go into a test operation phase. So we're going to test this cavern at different operating pressures, and we're going to cycle it as we anticipate will be the case in real operation. And so we expect to take a lot of learnings from this phase, still in terms of materials, but also in terms of services, the surveys that we want to do operating in a hydrogen pressure. We're going to be testing these, and of course we're going to be testing our models for seeing how the caverns react in terms of temperature fluctuations, and we're going to of course be checking the quality of the hydrogen that comes out of the cavern. So that was Krumern. In parallel, we're doing another project, this time together with partners, with OGE, RagSafe, and NAFTA. And this is a site in Bavaria. So here we identified a portion of an existing reservoir. And we have a test program consisting of 3 phases, where we would inject natural gas with hydrogen in increasing concentrations. So in the first phase, we inject for 2 weeks. We wait for 3 months, and then we withdraw. And we will do that in successive phases with 10% and 25% hydrogen concentration. We have the first results from the first phase. So this graph shows the hydrogen concentration that came out from the first testing. And so we were able to recover 90% of the hydrogen that was injected. We've also had interesting observations in terms of small microbiological activities yeah, some sulfur presence that we're going to further explore. But all in all, the results were very much in line with what our technicians were anticipating. So we think that these results are promising, and we're going to move on then to the next stages this year. So why are we doing all of this? I mean, because we really see that geological storage is essential to enable a transition to a hydrogen-based economy. You very quickly start getting to scales where you cannot store what you need above ground, and you need geological storage. And we also think that the value that geological storage provides goes way above just the arbitrage value that you see that market players directly see. So there is a societal value offered through developing such infrastructure. This is very well explained in a study that was just recently published, and this is where these two illustrations are coming from. It's a study by GIE. It's publicly available, so if you have interest, I encourage you to look into it. So they very well explain the different drivers of the societal value, and they also do some quantitative analysis. And so, for example, in 2030, they derived that in the EU, there is a gap of 36 terawatt-hours of storage between the optimal size of storage and what is actually being developed, the projects that are under development until now. So there is a huge gap. And now, building on our pilots and all this information, we started moving into the next steps. So we also announced just recently that we have plans to develop up to 600 gigawatt hours of storage commercial scale facilities. And we're going to start in northwest Germany, where we have the salt caverns. And 250 of this capacity could come for Krummorn, where we're doing our current pilot, because we have two commercial sized caverns under brine that could be utilized for a commercial operation. So we've done this step, and in terms of demand, we haven't just relied on our assessment and the studies, but we also just recently done a market survey approaching our future customers, so hydrogen capacity off-takers, and we have, let's say, received good confirmation that the demand is high for this type of projects. And also it was very good to engage with the customers, because in developing the sites, we don't just develop capacity, we also develop storage products. So it was interesting to engage with customers to understand what is their speed of the facilities that they require, what is their ratio between injection and withdrawal capacity, and so on. So we are starting to do all of this, but I guess the first facilities, as it's explained, would come into operation in 2030 if we do all the engineering now and all the permitting now. So we have started on that, and it's going to take still a while until we reach a final investment decision. As explained, there are still some technology and some permitting aspects that we need to manage, but we're very confident that we can manage those. I think the biggest challenge that we see in terms of really start building the facility is still linked to regulation. So we, in order to invest, we need to have a clear and favorable regulatory environment. So we envisage that this could be a regulated regime that could be built on a European level target, like the one that we have seen in the GIE study, broken down into national targets. So thinking of Germany, where it's the first market that we're going to tackle, we envisage that there could be a national storage target, and then some scheme, like some schemes typically based on CFD type principles that have performed well into the ramp-up phase of new markets. So that concludes what I've prepared for you today. I'm happy to take questions if there's questions now, but I'm also going to be around today and tomorrow, and Uniper has a stand just a few meters from the stage at C44. So thank you. There is one question. The gentleman there with the...
Thanks for that. Could you go back a few slides where you showed the concentration? Can you explain what that means? To me, it reads that the
This one?
concentration of hydrogen disappears, that you lose the hydrogen. Could you explain?
Well, I mean, we inject at 5% concentration, and then we stop and wait for 3 months. And then we start withdrawing. So the first hydrogen comes, almost has that 5% concentration. And then the more you withdraw, the more you go and reach for hydrogen that has gone diffused further away. So this concentration decreases, but then if you integrate, if you sum all the molecules that you have withdrawn, then you end up with almost 90%. So some will have migrated even further away, or some might have turned into methane with the so-called methanogenesis, because there's some bacteria that can turn hydrogen into natural gas.